In 1823, Birmingham comedian James Dobbs first performed a song called I Can't Find Brummagem. It was a humorous and nostalgic take on the fact that Birmingham had changed so much. This is important, that's an authentic connection between the past and the present and future plans, or something will be left out. And that something could be as important as a sense of local identity and a feeling of home. Placemaking isn't just about buildings and spaces, it's about stories. We need to be community storytellers, drawing on our own personal heritage to help shape the future. You've probably seen the selected history of a place used by cities as part of their brands. It's often, this cherry-picked history is often the history that we come to know the most. For Birmingham, in Birmingham history, it's often phrases like workshop of the world, city of 1,000 trades, and individuals such as Matthew Boulton or Joseph Chamberlain. But this commodification of history, it creates simple and memorable stories, but it leaves out the real human stories. And in Birmingham, it excludes a significant part of the population, migrants who moved here in the 20th century and made the city their home. So for Birmingham history that's mostly promoted, who is it for? I mean, you might argue that history is complicated, messy, there are just so many people, it's impossible to tell all stories. But by oversimplifying the past, you end up with something that resonates with nobody. And you're in danger of cobbling together this idea of historical significance from search engine results and AI queries, rather than looking to local stories and shared memories that actually mean something. Museums and heritage organisations are also sometimes involved in placemaking, and you might think that would help, but that can be problematic too. Because they often only have a partial history of a place and don't have the things in their collections to tell the stories. Museums can have a kind of outdated look, I guess, on towns and cities. Because their collections are rooted in the past, they haven't really been challenged in what they present, and they do like to avoid debate. And because they don't have more, because they often haven't been collecting in the 20th century or haven't collected that much, they struggle to tell the modern stories of towns and cities and the diversity of communities. An example of that is the lack of LGBTQ history that's in museum collections, and because it isn't there, they can't really tell the story of queer histories in museums. There might be various months where they have events for all sorts of things, but what's actually in the collection is disappointing. There are some museums that are doing a better job. I don't want to damn all museums. You might think of some museums that are doing a great job, but there's many museums that struggle to tell inclusive stories that reflect their communities. So where can we look to find a sense of place in a changing world? The answer is actually with us, past, present, future. So where can we look to find a sense of place in a changing world? The answer is with ourselves, the past, present and future residents of the city. When I first moved to Selly Oak, which was 10 or 11 years ago, I felt quite disconnected from the street that I lived. It was mostly a transient population of students, and it didn't seem to have any sense of community. It was history that provided me with the first key to feeling more at home, and I know that sounds very strange, but I was working at Birmingham Museum and Art Gallery at the time, which opened in 1885. And I was quite surprised to find the terraced house I was living in and that whole street was built before 1885. It had a longer history than the museum. And I noticed a sign on a house that was a few doors up that was carved into the walls, and it said Bodderwithan Place, 1879. I felt like it was a calling card from the past, and I felt a sense of connection with this nearby neighbour who, like me, was from North Wales, even though they'd long since moved on, obviously not there anymore. So I've lived there quite a while now, and I got used to the tide of students washing in and out every year, and I got to know some of the dwindling numbers of permanent residents there that were mainly elderly Irish people who'd been living there for decades. And I got to know them basically because they were fussing over my dog, so they'd come and talk to my dog and then talk to me a bit as well. And for them, the history was a very recent thing. They felt like 40, 50 years had gone by in the blink of an eye. And one of the interesting things to say about their history, as in many histories in this city, is that migrant history is often left out of the official City of a history. It just isn't there. As is working class history, as is women's history, and you can kind of go on and on. You can think of loads of things that kind of are missing from history, and they're really, really important stories, and they should be known. But going back, first of all, into what we have around us and to signs, names, words and signs, they can be very meaningful when connected to a place. And I like to see the traces of place of people in streets, and that can include the sort of blue plaques of memorable people, or the memorial plaques that you sometimes see for people. And I think it's especially meaningful when you can get a sense of somebody who somebody was. And we have a plaque for my dad on a seafront bench in Llandudno, and it says, sit down, take a minute, and then let's go. Because we wanted people to know that this was a man who could not sit down. He was constantly on the move. And sometimes when I visit there, I see people read the sign as they sit down, and if they don't move on fast enough, I feel I can hear my dad tutting, come on now, come on, let's go. So, paying for a bench or a memorial plaque is one of the few ways that you can insert a little bit of personal history or storytelling into the environment around you. But with placemaking, you could actually do much more. There's the opportunity to do much more because, sorry, I've got a little bit stuck. Yeah. Paying for a bench or a memorial plaque is one of the few ways that you can insert a piece of personal history and storytelling into the world around you. And placemaking offers the opportunity to do much more. We are the keepers of our personal history. We have the jigsaw pieces of a much, much bigger story. And these are important to our environment and shouldn't be lost. There are things that belong to our parents and grandparents that have been handed down to us that are so precious. You can think of all sorts of things, old photos, letters, textiles, jewelries, poems, sayings, even like larger objects. I actually have a kind of old, like a really big chest, which is pretty ugly. But the reason I keep it is there's a story that my great-great-grandfather, Moses Young, fell into it when he was drunk. So I see it and it makes me laugh. But all of these objects, they all have stories. There are stories, there are personal heritage, but they're also more than that, because I believe that personal heritage is community heritage. As I said, that everything connects. And I believe we can harness our personal heritage to tell the stories of our neighbourhoods, our towns and our cities, and also that we should do it, that we should be setting that narrative, because as we've seen, otherwise it's going to be left out or misrepresented, So we kind of have to take the bull by the horns and say we're the ones that are going to do this. And I think the placemakers need to know that personal heritage holds the key to community heritage and to local heritage. And placemakers should work with communities to unlock these stories. And by doing so, they'll make better plans, they'll get better buy-in, and they can give back to the community. One of the ideas I've had for this, which I'm going to advocate right now, is that placemakers should work with communities to develop community archives, and that they should enable people to become the archivists and storytellers of their own history. So, in this idea that I have of a digital community archive, I imagine that people can upload their family histories online. And I also think there could be a series of events in real life and online that allow people to find out about personal archiving, digitisation, research, local history, oral history, writing, all those things that would help you to do these things and to help you research your own history. And I think by providing these various sort of accessible pathways to finding out more, we can get a lot of different people involved and empower them really to know their own stories and to tell their own stories. So I'm not looking at history through rose-tinted glasses. I know a lot of history is really difficult and painful, and stories can be really painful. But actually, I think placemakers need to know this too, need to take this on board and understand that personal and community resilience is needed to sustain people in challenging times. There's a lot actually to learn from communities about this, rather than things being imposed on us from above to make things seem better. You might wonder, well, how could this community archive inspire placemaking? Well, I have a bit of a vision here, which might not be realistic, but I'm going to go with it. In my vision, the stories are woven into the fabric of public spaces and buildings. So I imagine that murals could be inspired by old photographs, that you might have maps on the floor, words that could be poems, sayings, recipes carved into walls, that patterns and shapes could be used to inspire how streets look like, and the furniture, and places created that feel friendly and familiar. These ideas provide an anchor to the past, but they don't weigh it down with nostalgia. They're still taking it forward. I imagine that any newcomers to a place would find it very welcoming to get the sense of place from the community, rather than it feeling like it doesn't belong to them. If we want to build a positive future that retains a sense of place and home, then we must get to know our own history. We must tell our own stories. Nobody else is going to do this for us, and we must be intentional about wanting to do it as well. We need to get involved in placemaking as community members, and we need to become placemakers. We should be inspired by our own personal heritage to make joyful and creative spaces in which to live. For any placemakers at here or are watching online, I hope you see how universal this approach would be, because every city's history excludes community's history, and every family holds memories that can help develop better shared spaces and improved well-being. I feel that placemakers need to do their bit to empower people to become the community archivists, artists and storytellers to shape the future. Placemaking basically shouldn't be something that's done to us. It's something that we should be heavily involved with. And to everybody in here, I want to ask, what are the stories in your family that you would like to keep and preserve and share? Because we all have them, and I really think it's worth thinking about that. And when you think about the power of all these stories, all the stories now in the room, and if we were to share them all together, I think you can see that there's quite a tide there of change that we could begin. We can begin to challenge that narrative of the city's history that is so narrow, and we can inspire positive change. So I'm finishing on this note that, as I said, personal heritage is community heritage, and together we can build a future that feels like home.